I felt a thought on my head. Then I knew I was shot.
There was a loud explosion behind my back.
Now, when we discuss the events of the coup d'etat in 1990, we often hear the victim side and at times the side of the perpetrators. But one group of first responders is telling their side of the incident that changed this country's history, and that is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Now, Code 727 is the police service's documentary on these events. And so joining us to talk more about it are retired Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Mervyn Richardson, and Public Information Officer at the TTPS, Inspector Michelle Lewis. Good morning.
Good morning and welcome. Welcome all.
Welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, I understand, Mr. Richardson, that at the time you were serving as a corporal, but before we get into the events, there's a very interesting name of the documentary, 727. Why was that name chosen?
Well, 727 is the date of the event. July, the 7th month, and it occurred on the 27th.
Yeah.
So if you put both together, you get
727. Yeah. And what was the significance of reminding people about that date?
Well, that is the date when an attack was made on the democracy of Trinidad and Tobago. For those who were wrong, we suffered greatly, and we were able to manage with some degree of, things happening and things. But we're alive today, and we can now tell the story of 727 and its effect on the country that I believe is still manifesting itself even today.
Even today, yeah. Now, I understand, Mr. Richardson, that you were a corporal at that time. What were some of your roles on and your duties on that day?
Well, I was a corporal, fine. So that, at the time. And I was attached to the commissioner's office. So I was like a chief clerk in the commissioner's office, working with the commissioner.
Yes.
So at the time, the acting commissioner was a guy they called Leonard Taylor. So Leonard Taylor was acting, and Mr. Jules Bernard was out of the country. So I just said it because if I continue to talk, that will be the whole story.
That'll be the whole story right there. Yes. Yeah. Interesting.
Right. So I was the chief clerk to the then commissioner, who was Mr. Leonard Taylor for the period. Yeah.
I want you to take us back, Mr. Richardson, because I want us to understand when you got the call, when you got the notice that something is happening, whether it be at the Red House, even here at TTT, what was the first thing that came to mind, and how did you decide to respond to that?
Well, it wasn't like that, There was mass confusion and there was no direct line of communication. So let me just, at the time in Parliament, they were discussing an AK-47 that went missing down in the West. No, that was a big deal then, an AK-47 missing. Now we're talking about AR-15 and all kind of thing, and it's a daily occurrence.
Yes.
But one AK-47 had slipped into the country, and that was big thing. So they were asking then to get a report. So the commissioner then, that Mr. Leonard Taylor, he asked me to get in touch and to do a report. Now it was evening, that is around after 4 and thing. As the chief clerk, that was my responsibility. So I had to be calling people all over. There was this inspector they called Boudram, and he was the court prosecutor at the time. So I had to call him to get the facts, what happened and thing, and did a memo for the commissioner's signature. And when I did the memo, I asked a guy they called Herman Johnson. He's now deceased. But he was an assistant superintendent in the special branch. Right. And he could have typed. In those days, they didn't have the thing. You had to be manually typing.
Yes.
And Herman Johnson typed that for me and brought it back. That was around 20 to 6 in the afternoon. And the commissioner looked at it. he asked me if I was satisfied, all the thing. Yes. Sign it, take it to the parliament. So I am walking with 2 stripes on my shoulder from headquarters to parliament.
As in Red House.
As in the Red House. And on my way there, there's this guy they call Sherland Tracy. He was a sergeant at the time. Sherland Tracy met me just about entering the Red House compound. He said, Richie, you're looking tired. You're looking tired. Give me this thing. So he took the document from me and he
went in.
So it relieved me of the document. And I turned around and made my entry into headquarters now on Sackville Street.
Yes.
That is on the northern side. And as I walked in there was a little room right in the corner, you know. So you make a left turn and then a sharp left turn again. And that used to be the change room. So as I went into the change room and changed back into civilian wear now, I have my shirt with my numerals and thing on it and coming outside. And this car just drove in. Now, there was this guy standing there. He was McLeod. He was the guard. And I just only tell him, how you going? And turn. And this car just drove in and the whole place just was a big explosion. So, panic. Flight or fright.
I want to pause you there, Mr. Richardson, because I don't want you to give out all, because I want people to see it and to hear it as well. But I want to come to you, Inspector, because we've never heard this account before. As I mentioned, we've heard the victim side, we've heard the victim's family side, we even heard the perpetrator's side, right? But we've never heard the police services side. And what was the point of bringing forth a documentary like this now? Because you have people like Mr. Richardson who are still alive and who can tell the story. But the significance of bringing forth this story now, why?
It is important that the nation get the full picture of what happened. A lot of times we heard that the police did nothing. And so in this documentary, you actually see for yourself, hear for yourself what the police officers did do, the importance of the special branch at the time and how they protected the Prime Minister and the President at the time. And so it gives an account not just to the nation to show that the police service did in fact execute our duties the way we ought to and above. And because you also heard the account of the Attorney General by one of the officers as well and how they took him home and that kind of thing. But it also gave the emotional aspect because, I mean, that trauma from 27th of July 1990 still resonates in a lot of the officers. The pain, some of them still had the items that they held, the tie from, former Winston Lucaran and other persons and, and the experience. So it also allowed the public and the police to experience what they went through. And for new officers coming in, because we also gave the opportunity to the recruits who are coming in to see and experience. So they felt, a sense of pride and, that this is my portion in the service and I'm going to take that mantle further.
Mr. Richardson, I understand that there was some lives lost that day. Some of your comrades would have fallen. Tell us about it in terms of, understanding that some of your colleagues died, but you still had to go back to work after this aftermath.
That was, lady, as you're talking now, let me just kind of jump forward in this. I went to training in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago. And, they asked me to speak about what had happened in Trinidad. Yeah. I was at the FBI Academy. And I couldn't do what I'm doing here this morning. I couldn't do it. But it's after time and speaking about it and dealing with it, you could know, well, you see, I'm emotionally charged now. Because on the day, I'm saying all these things to give you a little picture. On the day when it happened, when the bomb went off and fire, you can't imagine, the whole headquarters burning. So I had to run. So I ran in the building. And my clothes with my numeral fell on the ground. And there was this inspector at the time they called Winston Cooper. he too has since passed. Winston Cooper found my shirt with the numerals on it. And so they called my wife home. And we say, I'm sorry, I get a little emotional. I'm sorry, give me a minute. Yeah.
And in that entire story, his wife felt that he had died. His wife felt that, and for days, because remember, this is a situation where, as he said, fight or flight. And so you're torn between going to your home or staying and fighting for the nation.
Inspector, you said that you show new recruits the documentary because you want them to understand what the police went through. And so we have every single year these recruitment drives going on. Do you think the public will ever truly understand the importance of the police service, especially as we reflect on a situation like this?
I think yes. I think the sober-minded persons, logical thinking persons will and appreciate it. Yes, the country continue to go through different stages as the world evolves, but the police service still continue to do our part and to the best of our ability to ensure democracy and stability in the country.
Yeah. Mr. Richardson, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Richardson, how can we as a country move after this? You are recalling the events that happened 33 years ago, is it this year?
33 years ago.
And you are still getting emotional. You recounted the tale of your wife, of them seeing your numbers and your uniform and telling your wife, and I could imagine at that moment what she felt. Do you think we can ever heal from this?
It will take a lot.
Even after 30 years?
Even after 30 years, it will take a lot, because it's only now we are able to deal, as the inspector said, to deal with these, because a lot of things were said and have been said, and the police service was painted in a way. Mm-hmm. But not only that, officers who went through this trauma would never afforded any...
Is it compensation or?
Well, with compensation, police get that. Thank you, Rocker. Therapy. Mm-hmm. And more than that, after the persons who were arrested and I was the person who was given the task again to provide thing and to look after them when they were being tried down in the West. Yeah. And you had men there who, well, they knew, some of them knew me because some of them were associates. I'm not proud to say that in the crowd there we had at least two who were former police officers who worked closely with me. It wasn't an easy thing. So that now we must learn from that. And such an event must never again preface itself by all the other things that were going on at the time. Yeah. Never. And sometimes when I look back, I'm seeing signs of the same things that are happening now that happened then, and
that led up to the coup.
That led to the coup, And we kind of is okay. So, we have these young officers and them who coming up and think, were you in the service then?
Yes, sir.
No.
Not yet.
So that at the time you still have myself and others like me around. We got to make sure that we nip these things in the bud, treat with it early so that the nation doesn't go through these days again.
Mr. Richardson, I have to ask you. You say that you're seeing similar things playing out now that you saw back in the coup before it led to the coup. Give me one example of what you're seeing now that is a cause for concern.
Well, many, but just look at, you see the amount of arms that coming into the country? There was a sign.
Yeah.
In the 1990s, we start to see not this type of sophisticated weapons that we see now, but it started to happen. And then people were moving. You know, I can't elaborate on that more.
Of course, yes.
But people are moving.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the same activity taking place now.
Yeah. Mr. Richardson, I have to ask, you mentioned compensation, okay, but more so therapy wasn't given at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you need that now? Is it going to work now? Have you found a way to deal with that sort of trauma?
Well, this morning I really, this reminds me of Washington.
Of
This
course.
same thing happened to me in Washington. Normally I can speak about it. But I had on my desk where I was working in headquarters, I had a radio and I received $65 compensation. So I did receive compensation. $65 that was to buy back the radio. Wow. But to take you to go and say to get somebody, then they employed a doctor they called Bontier. And Dr. Bontier was based in St. James. But he was the police doctor, and you will go by Dr. Bontier as and when. So, but there was never a deliberate
sort of one-on-one
right,
to
policy,
unpack what
right,
happened.
and
Yes.
policy
Yes.
that these people who went through the trauma, and I can tell you more, you know, but I went through, but we don't have the time,
Yes.
you know. And I'm certain the other we met as all of us who were involved in 727. And again, when we met, people start crying and coming and holding each other for 30, well, at the time it was 29 years.
We're now 33 years.
Well, it was 31 years then.
Yeah.
So that these things, and it happened, and people risked it. People risked their life. People had permanent injuries.
Yes.
Who lost their life? Like Roger, he lost his life in the other police officer, the same McLeod. He lost his life, right? And you would hear it didn't. I don't want to give out too much, but in the next day when I spent whole night because it's war at that time. It's war.
So did you actually have the and like were you a first line to go out and fight, or were you in the office?
Fight, ma'am.
Tell me. Tell me.
Ma'am, in that day, sorry for calling you ma'am, but you know the old police thing in my
You go ahead, Mr.
Right,
Richardson.
right. So in that day, remember, it was a normal day, you know. It had football and it had everything and everybody nice and people living their life. And all of a sudden, boom, and people are like, what going on?
Yeah.
So it didn't handle, and police were not armed. It's like us here, it's like
Civilians.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like how TTT wasn't prepared for it. So everybody was caught. Normal thing. So that it took a couple hours before we actually start the fight back. It took hours because it was a normal day, and in Trinidad, well, now we have that experience to lean on, but it wasn't where Trinidad, everybody with gun and just, that wasn't us. But I'm saying now, let me tell you this, we had a man who used to sell nuts, and TTT, and he used to walk through the whole headquarters, and he coming and selling nuts. And on the day of the coup, the nuts man there. We learn anything from that?
Inspector, I'm coming back to you only because I understand it's supposed to be showing on TTT, code 727.
So it will be shown on the 26th and the 27th on TTT. Right. But let me also add, when Mr. Richardson spoke of officers coming together and getting that release and opportunity to talk, that was when we actually was filming code 727.
Okay.
And so we had the victim and witness support team there to give that level of counsel to them, because in watching the film, you would see some of them crying, and it will cause some of the persons who are actually watching the film as well to go through. So the police service, even, I mean, long after, but now that these things are there and available, when they were rehashing the story and going over that again, we had the victim and witness support therapists there to give that support. So We know that it is going to take a long time because it's something that is part of your life, and it is not something that anybody really wants to go through. As a police officer, or even as a person, even as a nation, it is something that is not, honorable in our history, but it is a part of. So last year, we had the first viewing of it. We had it at Queen's Hall, where we had, at that time, Her Excellency, former President Paula Weeks. And during that entire production of it, we interviewed about 25 officers. We honored 40. But we know that there are more than that. And so we intend at some point in the future to carry this documentary a step further and get the involvement of others, because we focus on the Red House and old headquarters, but remember you had other division and other things happening. You had a lot of looting taking place. Yes. You had a lot of officers coming from different areas. Even in the documentary, part of it captures here, and how the officers utilize, because here was the point where information was being shared to the public, because here's where the Jamaat al-Muslimin leader was at the point in time.
It's under siege.
So we intend to get more, because now that the officers who experienced, because they didn't want to talk, they were hurt of how the organization treated them. And, it's like so long after you all now coming to talk about it, because it was never said before. The police account was never said before. And so the audiovisual unit, the police service, as we evolve and grow and expand, we wanted to give that documentary from the police perspective, not from the government perspective at the time, not from the, as you said, the perpetrators, not from the victim, the civilian perspective, but from the police perspective and what they went through, and they did.
Inspector, is it also going to be showing at Central Bank at some point, or is it?
Yes, it will.
When do you have a date when it's going to be airing there?
I cannot say as yet what is the date. We really want persons to tune into TTT on the 26th and 27th and capture it there, and then we're going to go further. We did have it at Movie Town when we had the week, film week.
Yes, of course.
And we had it there as well. So it is going to be made more public to the public, I should say, where persons can view it, not just on the 26th and 27th, which is the anniversary of the attempted coup, but also subsequently. And there's a demand for it, because persons who have seen it really want to be able to share it. We have also gone into the divisions as well for officers to view it as well, because we have officers serving now who never heard former DCP's account. And we have just one more serving officer in the police service as ACP Chandul, who was one of the officers at the point in time, and he's still a serving member of the service. So, it's a really, it takes it. The emotion does really have you up and down when you watch it as a police, and to see what your TE officers went through.
Mr. Richardson, Inspector just mentioned that there's a serving member who was there at the coup. He's still in the service. What causes you to come back to your job after something like that?
Well, you sign up for this. I mean, when in your wildest dream, I showed the inspector, I know her a while now, she signed it. In her dream, she's not thinking about coup. Because she has a family and things like that. And the way how we live among each other. So that when things like these happen, you have to grow, There was no template. Do this, then do this. You had to make on-the-spot decision. I saw, ma'am, where I was in Sanghi Grande, that's Eastern Division, because sometimes you had to be focusing all over. I was in Eastern, and I saw a female and a male police officer sleeping on the same bed. And I say, that have stuck with me. In the time of crisis, every other thing does go, and you got to now look out for yourself. And people just them lie down and sleep and hug up, not in any amorous way.
Of course, yes.
But for support, they are both left the service, not in anything. But I always remember that scene when you go into you see a man and a woman who have no intimate relation, hug up, sleeping, comfort. So these are the things, when you join, they don't prepare you for this. I can't say, no, I've left the service 9 years now, so I don't know. But they don't train you for this. Mm-hmm. There is no manual to say, if they come here, you do this, and there's no manual for that. So on the day, everybody had to come up with, and it took a while before the lines of command started. So you had to do things. So yes, we survive it, and we're stronger for it. But I'm saying we had to learn. If it happened and we didn't learn anything, it was a waste of time.
And that's my final question for you, Mr. Richardson. Just share with us some lessons we can learn from something like that.
But we had to, first thing, be prepared. Because we live in a world now where we see things happening and we like to say we copycat and things. We saw it happen in America. We saw what went on in France last week when your neighbor house on fire.
Wet yours.
Wet yours. That is what we have to have a number of things where, again, if something happened, we could move people. We learn from that. Not on that day, not everybody, and when I say everybody, all the head of the security, head of government, they should never be all in the same place at the same time.
Yes.
Police had to sacrifice. You will see it, so I can't talk about it. Police had to sacrifice to get one person here, to get another one there, and let's leave that.
And we'll leave it there for now. Mr. Richardson, thank you so much for coming in. I do appreciate a little taste of what we can look out to in the documentary, and I hope that with time, Mr. Richardson, that you do heal from this.
Yes.
So let me thank you so much for joining us this morning.
And thank you all.
Inspector Misha Lewis, always a pleasure. I'm not going to be seeing you next week, Monday, but for now, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And that was Inspector Misha Lewis, and of course, former retired, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Mervyn Richardson, just giving us a taste on what you can see on Code 727, a TTPS 1990 memoir, which will, of course, be beginning to show on TTT from July 26th and continuing on the 27th, which is the anniversary of the coup. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.